welcome to Barley and Me, conversations with the makers of your favorite beer and the people who drink them. I'm your host, Ben Rice. This is episode 127. We're here today in our own homes for COVID-19 shutdown. Usually we'd be on site, but not today. Today I've got very special guests. We're going to talk to some hop farmers, something that Barley and Me has never done before. Our special guest today, Carla Wosoba of Wosoba Farms Hops in Iowa.
Yes, hello.
And Clinton Herschfeld from Herschfeld Hops in Ohio.
Hello, hello.
And then our special guest today, comedian and educator, Amy Estes.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you guys so much for doing this. This is going to be fun. I've never talked to an educator, nor have I talked to any hop farmers. And fun fact, Carla and Clinton, you're both also educators.
That's correct.
It's going to be a very strange conversation because it's kind of a weird combination of career paths. I think it's kind of fun to see how everybody here kind of found their paths and had ended up being an educator and a hop grower. Like, that's interesting. So tell me stories. You know what, Amy, let's start with you, as you have no hop growing experience that I know of.
I have no hop growing experience. So how I found my path to being an educator, it's really boring. I have known I wanted to be a teacher since I was 8. I had like a great 3rd grade teacher. I am bossy, or have leadership skills, I think is now what we're supposed to say to little girls, but in the 80s they called it bossy. And I went to school to become an English teacher, and minus one weird year where I worked as a massage therapist, which I don't recommend. I was a teacher, so that was my very boring path, just a very straight line.
Yeah, you're like, this looks great. I think I'll try it out. And it's like, that was great. Okay,
it works.
We'll keep going.
It's fun. So this is my 14th year of teaching, and I've taught middle school for almost all of it. So 8th grade English is kind of my jam. Yeah.
And Carla, since I know you have a combination with Amy in that there's 14 years of educational experience, how did you find that path for it?
Yeah, so I've not been a teacher. I've only been a high school counselor. In Iowa, you do not have to be a teacher first to become a counselor. I know some states are different in that respect as far as licensure, but I had a really great high school counselor, and she made me want to do that job as well. So I'm in my 2nd school. I started off in as far as Iowa standards go, a medium-sized school, and I now work in a school of 1,400 students.
Oh, man.
Mm-hmm. We have 4 counselors, and we start by alphabet.
Okay, that's a little bit easier. I was like, that sounds intense. That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And then, Clinton, what about you? How'd you find your path?
Yeah, so I was, jeepers. I did my undergrad in my biology degree and a chemistry minor. I was about halfway through my junior year, started getting together with who is now my wife, and started looking at just life plans and goals and that route of things. And so opted to not go the medical route and instead started piling in education courses. So I taught high school science at 2 different schools for a total of 4 years, chemistry and biology primarily with some zoology. And then the 4 years prior to this, I've actually been a high school assistant principal. For 4 years. So kind of the disciplinarian, a little bit of the hammer kind of thing as the assistant principal. About 800 kids there in grades 9 through 12, just the principal and myself on that. And 3 counselors, so pretty good ratio for you. Yeah. And then and now this year I've actually transitioned to be the IT director for our district as well. Oh. So I've left the principalship and now I'm the computer guy. So which harkens back to a few courses I took in undergrad. So I tell kids, don't count anything out, because I took a handful of some computer science classes and things, and, being an educator comes into that too. So that's the education story.
Yeah. I just remembered, I don't know why I didn't think of this way earlier. It's a true fact from a long time. My mom is a college professor, and my sister started a school after teaching for about a decade, and is now running another school from there. So I'm like, oh, yeah, education's important, I guess.
My wife's a school counselor. She's staying home with the kids now. She's been staying home for 2 years, but yeah, it's can't get away from this house. So
yeah. And then somehow 2 of you started getting an itch for like, hey, maybe there's other things you could be doing beyond assisting the youth of America?
Yeah. So I mean, if you're in education, you know that sometimes you need a drink at the end of the day. Let's be real. But when I was in college, I hated beer. I thought it was disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
And my friends at Brown used to have these pretty elaborate beer tastings that they would host. And eventually they convinced me to try their beers. They would get really nice beers, not the watered down cheap lagers. And so I started to like beer a little bit. And I thought this was way back in the early 2000s. I thought it'd be pretty cool to start a brewery in Iowa one day.
Oh, yeah.
Well, fast forward, now there's lots of them.
Yeah, but back then.
Back then there weren't. But now when I finally came back to that thought, there are lots of them. And I grew up on a farm. My parents still farm in eastern Iowa. They have about 1,000 head of beef cattle and lots of hay and crop ground. Anyway, I decided that if I wasn't going to start a brewery, maybe I could be a supplier to local breweries. And did some looking, and it turns out there used to be a lot of hops grown in the Midwest before Prohibition.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it just kind of went from there.
Yeah, because there's that Milwaukee beer culture. They needed to get it from somewhere. And St. Louis
so
and all
I
that stuff.
I actually kind of got started through another educator. At the time, 4 or 5 years ago, I was coaching high school track, and someone said, you should talk to Mark Jensen. He's a home brewer and knows a lot about beer and hops. So one day I said, hey, sometime I'd like to talk to you about beer. And he said, do you want to make beer? And I said, not really. He said, do you want to grow hops? And I said, yes. And he said, well, I just dug up some rhizomes yesterday. You can have a bunch if you'd like. So I had to kind of scramble because hops are a permanent thing. And that year I put in 25 plants as a trial, and it went okay. And then the next year I went from 25 plants to 3 acres.
There you go.
That's my short story anyway.
Yeah. Clinton, it seems like you had some pretty a lot of agreement in that process.
Yeah, kind of the same way. So I grew up on a farm as well, quite a bit smaller than that. We had hogs when I was in high school, and then kind of transitioned away from that. So both my parents all worked off farm and everything. So I say we had enough land to stay busy, but not enough to get rich. So when I came back, I was in the Columbus area in Ohio for college and things like that. Got married, lived there for a few years, and I wanted to relocate to the country before we had our first kid. And so that's kind of what brought us to where we are, which is not far from my parents' house. But we have just a 4-acre plot of ground, and about an acre and a half in the front is an old pasture that used to be in front of the big main barn, which is since torn down. So I really started liking beer in college, as many of us would maybe agree to, and really started getting into that. And my father-in-law has a connection. He works for Ohio State in the Extension Service. And so he kind of put me in touch with the main hops guy for Ohio, Brad Bergerford. And I remember getting these, like, they look just like sticks. They mailed me in the mail, and they came in like little sandwich bags, and I threw them in the ground, and most of them came up. So those are my first trial hop plants. We had this random orphan silo right in the middle of our farm, next to where the barn used to be. And so we just used the silo as that vertical space, and we trellised them up the silo for a couple years.
Oh, okay.
I kind of got tired of running tractors and combines down the road for an acre and a half of beans or an acre to acre and a half of corn. And so we went from 3 plants up to the full acre. So we're right about 1,000 plants, and we put them in last June. So this is our first full growing cycle. So we're doing strings. Yeah, so our strings are up. We got strings up last week. And now, oh my gosh, they're coming. We got a little bit of heat, a little bit of sun. So we're about ready to start training soon. So it's exciting.
Yeah, and the life cycle of hops is kind of a strange one. If you're going to enter the industry, it's not like an immediate hit.
Right. It's kind of like, I kind of compare it a lot to orchard establishment, or like vineyard type establishment. Yeah, where you've got those establishment years, and then as those plants develop maturity, then you get ready to roll. Quality goes up, yield goes up. least that's what I'm hoping for anyway, right, Carla?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's definitely some potential for snags along the way in terms of weather and things like that. But yeah, it definitely takes 3 to 5 years to get to where you'd really like to be.
Yeah, it's a tough business. Have you enjoyed your foray into hop growing so far?
Absolutely. I mean, I've said that when you drink a beer that somebody has brewed with your hops, it takes away all of the stressful moments that you may have felt throughout the growing season. I mean, truly, that's why you do it. Even if you're not making a ton of money off of it, it feels like you get some real satisfaction out of having contributed to a product like that.
Yeah, and you get to see somebody say something about a beer like, "Oh, those are my hops." Take that. Like,
yes, yeah, that's super fun.
Yeah, it's very strange because I talk to a lot of people and they're always like, "Oh, there's these craft malt people," and people go crazy for that. But nobody talks about malt in beer anymore. They're like, "Well, what are hops are in here?" But nobody talks about hop growers.
Yeah, and I think the craft malt piece is going to come back around a little bit. There's always trendy things, but not everybody likes hoppy beers. So even though that's the thing right now, I don't know that it's going to always be the big thing. Clinton, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think a lot of that kind of craft homegrown malt type thing is coming into the forefront. I know there's been a lot of growth around here in Ohio and some big facilities going in. So I think it's that value added proposition that craft beer brings. I mean, why do I go pay $5 or $6 for a pint of something that was made in state versus, $3 or $4 for something that's made elsewhere on a large scale? It's got to be that value added. I sit down at the end of the bar and right there's the brewer, there's the guy, and he says, "Man, you got to come check this out. Look at this." And that's pretty powerful. So
yeah.
Super powerful.
Yeah. And I feel like, Amy, I've given you short shrift here, but you also created a secondary career out of education, going into stand-up comedy and writing.
I did. Yeah, I really like hearing, I just have to say that I really like hearing about the hop growing process because I'm an English teacher, so of course I have to turn it into something allegorical, but I feel like it's similar in terms of watching a kid really blossom, when they're frustrating and you see that, I teach middle school, so we see kids that are terrible sometimes, and then they come back in high school and they've turned into these wonderful human beings who are ready for adulthood. And so I was listening going oh, that's such a, you have to be willing to put in investment. And it's just cool to hear about something so different from my life. But yeah, I teach and then I do a lot of humor writing and some personal essay writing and then stand-up comedy, which is a lot of fun. It's a nice break from teaching and a great outlet. Yeah, it's good.
So how'd you find that? Because you started later in life.
I'm a late bloomer.
And a lot of comedians get their start young and vibrant and not beaten down by the world yet.
I'm an old crone. I got my start because there's this performance show and podcast and book called Mortified, where people read from their journals before age 19. So all this work they created early in life. And I had a journal that was particularly embarrassing that I used to read from occasionally as a party trick when I would get drunk. And my friends were like, "Amy, you have to send this to Mortified. This is so funny." And I did and got accepted to produce a piece with them and then performed. And the first night I went to perform in San Francisco, I thought it was going to be a smallish crowd, but there were 600 people there. And my friends came with me and they were like, "Oh my God, this is terrifying." And I was like, "Well, we'll see if I either really love it or really hate it." And I really loved it. And the producer was like, "Wow, you're good on stage. You have a good stage presence," which I attribute to teaching. You're used to controlling a crowd. A group of drunk adults has nothing on a room of stone cold sober 13-year-old girls. And so I really loved it. And so I started taking stand-up classes. I was 34, and I just, really liked it, and it's been super fun. And then I've been writing for a long time, but started doing some satirical, like humor writing in the past year, and have just enjoyed it a lot. So it's kind of a blend of all the things I like.
I guess when it comes to being a hop grower, one of my questions that I wanted to ask is, how do you build your brand? How do you get your hops to market, so to speak? What are the challenges inherent in that? What are the things that were like surprisingly easy? Like, I thought this was gonna be really hard, and it was like, oh, this part's actually a pretty simple step.
Okay, I'll go first. I think that one of the easy parts is that craft brewers do want to use a local product because that enhances their own marketing. But one of the things that can be challenging as a small grower, and Clinton, I'm sure you'll know what I'm talking about here, but if a brewer has one beer that they consistently make year after year, whereas a lot of small craft brewers are doing different brews all the time, mm-hmm. It's hard to sell your product to a brewer that's making one beer year round if you're not able to supply them with a year's worth of hops, because they want to have, they want to know that their beer is going to turn out the same every time they make it. So if they're having to use some of my hops and then also some of Clinton's hops, they're grown in different parts of the country, it's going to change the flavor of their beer. So that's a challenge in some ways. So I have found that it's easy to sell small amounts of mm-hmm. hops to brewers who want to make a beer with local hops, but it might be a 50-gallon batch of beer, and that's not very much hops for me to supply to them. So having a consistent place to sell all of your crop can be a little bit tricky in that sense. Yeah, that's what I kind of imagined would be a problem. Clinton, have you seen that to be the case as well?
Yeah, yep. I think the biggest thing is there's just a lot of direct marketing. And so, being out there and being kind of people, we're plant people, but we're people, which is good. And so it's great to get out. Yeah. And kind of find that right brewer and build that relationship. I'm trying to think. The other thing you kind of run into sometimes is just the hop industry, especially in Ohio. It's got some growing pains that I think we're kind of over the hump on. I think there have been some quality concerns from brewers. They've kind of been a little once bitten, twice shy. Yeah. And so I think that's the case. Pacific Northwest, or we call it the Pac West, they're kind of just. They didn't tear any plants out 100 years ago with Prohibition because they had international ports, and so we lost 100 years of hop growing lore, and the canon is gone. There is no one around that you can go talk to that's done it. And so it's a neat community that we're a part of. Here in Ohio, we have a hop growers guild. And I think that's going to be really good moving forward because we're starting to get some centralized inventory and things like that where we can post analysis. If you're a total hop geek, you can look at all the different oils and things like that, and then brewers will select based on certain oil composition because then that's what interacts with the yeast and things like that in kettle to make different flavors. And so to have all that analysis available, I'm hoping that some brewers pick up and say, man, these are consistent enough that we can get Ohio hops in this year round. We've got the quantity and the capacity to do that. So that's something we're really excited to try.
And that's something that we haven't gotten to yet in Iowa, but I'm really hoping happens in the near future. There just aren't enough growers banded together yet to do that, but I think it's really important. And I would actually love to talk more at some point about the Ohio Hop Growers Guild, because I would like to know more about how that's all been put together.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yep. We got academic advisors like from Ohio State University. We have Brad Bergerfrid's on with that. And then we have a variety of different growers. We interact with the Ohio Craft Brewers Association as well. Kind of go hand in hand to bring beer, keep moving beer forward in Ohio.
Mm-hmm. Aside from the challenges of marketing, I personally can say that I've really enjoyed the all the people who I've met who are not only growers but also brewers and people who just love good beer that I never would have interacted with had I not started growing hops. So that's I guess you could say socially has opened up a whole new avenue in my life.
It's really cool that you guys are able to do the like kind of one-off beers for now, because it is hard as a very new industry, this craft hop industry, because really it is just that Yakima Gold is the market, and like people in Europe that have been doing it for centuries. And so you're a new business model featuring something that takes years to build. And it is very cool that a lot of brewers are like, we understand that this is hard, but we're going to do what we can to make sure you're there because we want you to be there. We like where you're at year 1, year 2. We know it's a hard struggle up to year 5, 6, whatever. And then as long as your quality grows and your yield grows, we'll get more and more from you as time goes on, because we want that. Our customers want that. So it's very cool that you guys are getting in on kind of the ground floor on this.
That has been one of the things that I've really enjoyed. Is getting in on the ground floor, and because everyone's learning together. I also think that a lot of brewers are really just great humans in general. I mean, I have some of the brewers that I know and work with volunteer to come help at the farm if I have a work day, or they'll put up a list and ask for volunteers from their beer community to come out and help. And I haven't really taken advantage of that very much, just because I kind of feel guilty, and sometimes it's hard to train new people.
Yeah.
There's
over
very
and over
specific
again.
tasks that have to be done. But I really appreciate that sense of community and the generosity as well.
Yep, I'd agree. Absolutely. It's, I've been tied to agriculture my entire life, and it's a totally different end of it to be on. I raise, a couple thousand bushels of wheat, and I take those in. Wow, that makes me really feel good. But I don't know. I don't have a lot of memories just like sitting around with friends, eating a loaf of bread, crackers, That's not knocking on Triscuit. That's just how it is, But get together with some good beer. That's a good, that's kind of changes things. So good cultural thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know where I'm going with any of this, guys, just so we're clear.
You want to talk about the importance of craft beer right now, since a lot of stuff is shut down? I don't know, our breweries are carry-out only right now.
Yep.
I don't know how it is across the country, but I'm pretty much not in a profit-realizing phase of operations right now.
Yeah.
with year 2, but you better believe we're out there. We're out there buying beer from these guys, and gals, because we need them to be there on the other side of all this too. So
yeah. Are they snagging up what you have? Like, oh, we're going to do a specialty beer. That way, we can go to market with something that's kind of different from what everybody else is putting out there?
I don't know if I've seen anybody change brew schedule yet. I don't think that's been the case, but I think it's just that patronage, just kind of putting money where your mouth is from a relationship standpoint. I think that's just a sign of goodwill at this point. So, because we'll have hops in the fall, and hopefully they're ready to roll and they'll remember. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what we're hoping. And
with your 1 acre, you said about 1,000 plants. How many varietals are you focusing on currently?
We did 3.
Okay.
We're 3, so half of them are Centennial. I grill what I like to drink, and dabble and brew with a little bit. So, a half of it, 500 plants, Centennial, and then a quarter of it's Comet, and then a final quarter is Fugel.
Oh, okay, cool. So you're doing some old school stuff.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Comet is just probably my favorite. Got a couple beers with that in it that I've made, and it's just it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool stuff. So I'm pretty excited for that one. Centennial's just versatile, and then Fugel's just good even for the, your reds and some of your less hop heavy ales and things like that. So yeah, I call that entry level craft beer.
Yeah. And to introduce a new consumer to a more straightforward beer, a little less aggressive. It's like, oh, by the way, this is still made with locally grown ingredients. Is pretty cool.
Yeah.
What about you, Carla? What's your game plan? What's your plan of attack?
I started with about 2,000 or 2,200 plants, and I have 4 different varietals. I have and equal amounts of everything. I have Chinook and Centennial, which are pretty. Like Clinton said, both are pretty versatile. And easier to grow, but also easier to get. And then I have Canterbury Golding, which is the closest I could get to East Kent Golding when I was started in terms of plants. And then I have Magnum, which is the probably the more exciting of what I have. But I put a lot of thought into what I chose to grow in terms of what I could grow in Iowa, what the yields were, their resistance to disease, what other people around me were growing. So I had quite a lot of factors I put into determining what I would grow.
And are you also focusing on like what people are drinking in your area, like what kind of beers are selling? Because you both mentioned some hops that are more seen in the lighter ales and lagers.
I think I did have some conversation with some brewers before I purchased plants, and that factored into my decision as in terms of what I was going to plant. But I think I guess I was thinking more about what am I going to be able to grow and get rid of, and what's going to yield, and what am I going to have the least problems with in terms of the diseases and the weather in Iowa, things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I did something similar. Just spoke to several brewers that are around me, that I would aspire to be a provider for, and basically said, what are you into? What do you use a lot of? And this is basically where all the Venn diagrams overlapped.
Are there hops that you would wish you could grow, but just your climate doesn't allow for them to thrive the way they need to?
I think more for me, more than the climate, there are some that I wish I could grow, but they're proprietal. So
yes,
not an option. Yeah.
Forgot about that. Good point.
Yes.
Yeah. Not only it's like we have all this history, also we own the rights to this, and you can't have it. Yeah. I forgot about that. Oh, that sucks.
I think citrus should be like a 4-letter word and not.
I agree.
Galaxy. It's like, what? Come on.
Yeah.
Is there anybody in your areas that is working on like a little hybrid type thing or playing around with rhizomes or anything?
Not that I know of.
Clint's like, it's me. It's me. I'm doing it.
No, it's not me. No.
He's just nodding. He's like, yeah.
There's a couple folks around in Ohio, members of the guild that are just kind of, they're just dabbling, doing some selective breeding and things like that. Some really just cool characters. We'll just kind of leave it there. But, they're out there breeding hops and getting new varieties together and stuff like that. So, people are starting to dabble, kind of poke around at it. But in my mind, variety development is a totally different side of the coin than any kind of production. Once you start getting males around, you're getting males around. That's bad news bear. So
agree. That's tricky business.
Yeah, it's a risk. Like you want to make sure that you're establishing that you're growing quality hops, let alone or just creating one exciting one that maybe isn't actually as good as you're hoping, but it's got this like you want to have quality first. It's an important part of beer. Is like, can you replicate what you've done here in all aspects? So that was fun. So let me ask: are there any for my nationwide listeners? I don't know if that's real. If somebody wanted to get a beer with your hops in it, where could they go? What could they do?
So nothing that I have sold has been canned or bottled yet. Hopefully that will happen soon, but I work with a couple of smaller breweries in Eastern Iowa that they've been starting to can and bottle due to COVID so that they're able to stay in business, which is, there's ups and downs to that. But in Dubuque, Iowa, I worked with Jubeck New World Brewing. They make some great stuff and they're fantastic people. And in Bellevue, Iowa is River Ridge Brewing. They are both currently canning and selling out of the brewery, but I will not have any more hops in any brews until this fall.
It's crazy. It's a crazy field.
Yeah, it's definitely unique. My dad's been a farmer his entire life, and he's really not involved in the hops thing that I'm into, even though it's on my parents' farm because they're busy enough with their own stuff. So I try not to ask them for a lot, but you can see when I struggle, whether it's with weather or something's not going wrong, not going well, excuse me, he wants to be able to help, but he doesn't really know anything about hops. And it's just a completely different type of farming. And it's just a completely different crop than what he's used to. So that's been a challenge for me, is that there isn't anybody within an hour and a half of my farm who's also growing hops. So I get a lot of people who think they know how to help, but they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So you just have to be like, okay, thanks. Yeah. But there's a lot of figuring it out on your own.
Yeah, for sure. I had a thought and then I lost it. It was going to be great. I was going to nail this one out of the park. And then this is a classic Ben Rice tactic, to think of something, not write it down, and then have it. I also just stand up, and as Amy can tell you, I never write new jokes, ever.
That's not true.
I never write.
You've had some good new ones come up.
Sure. Thanks. No, they're bad. It's because I don't ever write anything down. I'm like, that's going to be good. I'm not going to write it. Like I had one today. What did I think? Oh, it was bad. It was about Grape Nuts cereal. And it's like, I liked it as a kid because like I have to have so much milk because you have to add, you just keep reapplying it like it's sunscreen.
And honey. You have to have honey with Grape Nuts.
I said this, and Becky, my girlfriend, she's like, oh yeah, I just dumped a bunch of sugar on them as a kid. I'm like, oh, what? I just ate them straight up.
Becky's correct.
Becky is correct.
My dad used to pour milk and just a rude amount of sugar on it and then microwave it, and I can still smell like a microwaved grape nut at 6 a.m.
Oh yeah, there was hot grapes were a thing. People would put them on the stove. I don't know.
It's like on the back of the box is a suggestion, but he would just nuke them forever, and oh my god. Still just like hits me in the back of the throat.
I was Grape Nuts like ideal customer. I'm like, they're like, yeah, put in like 1/8 of a cup and then 3 cups milk, and then you can maybe chew it if you're lucky.
And you can just see them expand. Like, whoa.
Yeah. And I'm like, you know what I need? I need a full bowl of this every morning.
Oh god.
Where does the word grape come into that anyway?
I don't know.
I feel like they would break my teeth now.
Yeah, they pretty much broke your teeth then. Like, I can't even imagine what they would do to an adult's teeth.
Oh god.
Anyway, terrible joke. I'm gonna keep it though. I'm gonna try it out when I'm allowed to. Sunscreen milk combo. I don't know.
In 2 years when we can start doing stand up again.
Yeah. God. Ugh. It's awful.
Killing me.
It'll keep, Ben. It'll keep.
Yeah. So we're all just floundering around. Like, what do I do with my pursuits and passions right now? Is it? How do you maintain the drive and excitement when you don't know what next week is going to be? That's a real question. I'm leaving.
Yeah, I mean, the work never stops for farmers.
Yeah,
Clinton knows this. So I guess since there's no school, I definitely have more time to get my work done at the farm.
I know, right?
So there's that.
I feel like guilty.
Stop bragging about having a purpose. My God. I like push out assignments and then I'm like, okay, cool. That's it for the day.
Yeah.
Gonna hang it out.
And my dogs are very happy that I'm home every day.
Oh, this is Hank and he's thriving. He has not stopped touching me in 6 weeks. We already, my wife put it in our wedding vows that she wouldn't get jealous of our over-the-top relationship, and it's really taken a turn. As you can see, this is fun.
Right up
our
in
day. Yeah, just constant.
Yeah. Clinton, what about you? Since we're all working in adjacent, at least, to educational fields, how is that change showing itself right now? What do you think it's going to become come whenever the school year ends and when the next one begins? What are you seeing or thinking is happening here?
Yeah, it's kind of our great debate. I think we're looking to have more devices available for families and things. Kicking around the idea, do we support providing things like internet access and things like that for families? It's kind of a tough spot. I think long term there'll be a requirement contingency plan if we have to go to distance learning in some capacity, that we just have to have the ability to do it, kind of thing. Just like we have other disaster preparedness things. So kind
of a hope for the best, prepare for the worst type circumstance. I think this is where everybody's kind of seeing it like, well, we're going to do what we can to survive now and like plan for if this continues, but like we'll hope it all returns to normal soon.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's, I mean, doing tech support. I mean, I've got teachers using just everything under the sun. And I tell you what, my email totally blew up. anything that ever lets you teach from a remote location right now is free. It's been free for like 5-6 weeks. And I'm telling people, I'm like, seriously, do not fall in love with all these things, because when the bill starts coming, what are we going to do then? So, yeah.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah. And I mean, teachers do what teachers do. They find a way, and they're doing a great job and, you know, going above and beyond to get it done. But it's like, I know that's free right now. I know it's going to cost money soon. So
figure out a way to save it and not have to re-access it ever again. You know, I mean, whatever. Find it. Yeah. Write your own program.
It is amazing how much stuff is just all of a sudden free.
Yeah.
But I was using a resource that they're still charging for, and I was like, what are you doing right now? So I don't want to shout them out, I'm sure. But I was just really surprised. But then I was like, I would never pay for this in the real time, so I'm certainly not going to do it now. But it's just, yeah, it's going to be interesting when we go back. If we go back.
Yeah,
this year.
I think you're making a good point about just in general when it comes to how the economy operates. I feel like everybody's realizing what's really important and what's kind of like, oh, we don't need to be spending this much on this thing. Like, are we moving towards a pay what you think it's worth type of arrangement? Like, you know, like Radiohead in 2003, you know, like just buy the album for whatever you think you want to. And then, you know, some people will pay like, hey, I really enjoyed this and I have the money, so here's $2,000 for a thing that's 10. And then it kind of washes out, maybe. And then people will stop doing things that are terrible because they don't get the money they want.
I think it's like not dangerous, but I do think that people are invested more when they pay for something. Like,
yes.
They care more. I think we see it even like in comedy, right? Like if someone pays for a ticket to a show, it's like a thing they're going to, rather than if they're given a ticket, then like who cares if they commit
or it just happens around them. And they're like, you know, I don't care for this.
Or it's just going on while they're talking at a table. But it is interesting to see like what things will be like just in general when this is done. I don't know.
I think it's interesting. There's a lot of things that I'm trying to focus on positives through all this as much as I can. I'm really excited to see families spending more time together. I think that's one of the most positive things that's happening right now. I'll be curious to see if one of two things is going to happen. Either people are going to, when this ends, people are going to just be so excited to get out and about that they're going to be, you know, mass gathering at restaurants, bars, concerts, whatever, or the opposite, where people are going to say, I didn't need to spend all that money going out to eat all the time and just stop. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a noticeable difference. I think it's, you know, really going to be about individual choice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think on the educational side, as you were kind of talking about, I think it's going to be more of an, appreciating the value of education and what work goes in from educators. I think it'll be a nice little reanalysis there of what services are being provided to your children.
It's funny. My personal experience is I've gotten a lot of really kind emails from students and parents being like, oh my gosh, you know, this is hard and please get this child out of my home. Thank you so much. But I have seen just a lot of complaining about distance learning. That's interesting to me. Just, you know, like teachers are figuring it out too. And I've had some like challenging conversations with friends where I've had to be like, back up off your kid's teacher. Like they're trying, you know, we're all doing our best. I certainly don't know how to do distance learning well, and I'm figuring it out. But I've gotten some really kind emails, and I'm hoping that it will sort of strengthen that relationship between families and teachers and students a little bit when we go back, just because we've had to be in so much contact. And parents, I think, have gotten a window into what their kids are doing a little bit more.
So my school district is doing optional online learning because only our high school students have a device. Middle and elementary students do not. So that would make it pretty difficult for us to require online learning.
Yeah, plus the rural connectivity issue as well.
Yes. So because of that, I don't think maybe we're seeing quite as much contact as you are, definitely from some families. But then I think that in some ways that's increasing the gap between school and some of the families that we struggled to reach beforehand.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've been involved with, as an administrator, I was doing a lot with summer school and things like that. It was one of those just supplemental responsibilities I had through the summer. And, you know, we're having the conversation at this point, what can we realistically offer as a summer school program if students are struggling with online instruction because of access or device or, you know, whatever socioeconomic factor? What can the expectation be for what's going to ultimately have to be some kind of virtual online summer program? Mm-hmm. And so I agree with what you're saying there for sure. It just kind of continues to feed that divide a little bit.
It is. I do feel like that's true in terms of like the kids who we were not connecting with, like that's getting wider. But I think that one thing I'm seeing, at least in terms of conversations among teachers here, and I teach for a large district in California, we did device handout for kids. So like if you wanted a device, you could come and get it. And they've offered some options and things like that with internet. But one of the things I'm appreciating a lot as a teacher is realization that sometimes we don't always know what's going on in a kid's home life. Like I teach in a district with some, you know, economic disparities, even within school, sort of like there's a, you know, a vast divide between some families. And I'm really appreciating, I'm big into like social emotional learning and, you know, like whole child focus. And it's been really nice to get to have those conversations about like, maybe they're not doing your work to hurt your feelings or be terrible. It's that they don't have resources or they're babysitting siblings or it's just not a priority for their family because of finances right now or whatever else. And so that's been a positive shift that I hope continues, is just some more understanding of what families are facing all the time.
I see a lot of that in Amy in my school as well. I work in a very diverse high school in terms of socioeconomic. Wow, that was a difficult word right then. Socioeconomic status. We have some of the richest kids in our town and also some of the poorest kids. And some of those students that you were talking about who we don't necessarily realize what goes on in their home, you know, their life outside of school. Those are some of my favorite students, and what they're some of the kids who keep me going through the hard parts of education, because regardless of what they're able to do for homework or when they're in the classroom, they just show you that they're really cool people and you love them regardless of what they're able to do academically. I'm thinking in particular of, I have one student who is, she's 17 and she's living independently and has emailed me a couple of times throughout this and said, can you please bring me some groceries? And I am more than happy to do that. She's grateful for anything, you know, not asking for specifics, or she doesn't ask for money. She just needs food. And, this kid's not going to do homework during this time. And I know that, and I understand that, and that's fine. She's just trying to survive. And that's where some of our students and families are at right now.
Yeah, it's a struggle, and it's great to see everybody kind of understand that and be adaptive and understanding that not everybody's the same. When you go home, we're not all going to the same place. We may all go to the same school, but once you leave, you don't know what that next room looks like.
Yeah, I know I'm fortunate that my home is clean and quiet and temperature controlled and there's food there. You know, some of our kids, you think there isn't even a clear space in their home where they could sit to do homework if they wanted to. There are a lot of things that are outside of their control. So we have to love them the best we can.
I had a student who got really anxious at the prospect of Zoom meetings. Like, a lot of teachers on my campus were requiring that kids like sign into Zoom with video, make eye contact, do the whole deal. And I grew up in a home where like school was prioritized and it was super important. And with two parents who were, very loving and concerned, and we were very fortunate, but my wife did not. She grew up in a very unstable environment between two homes, and lived in her car, graduated from an alternative school, did not, she's someone who was really, really unstable. And she was telling me the thought of someone from her school having to see the inside of her house or see what was going on really filled her with complete panic, even as an adult. And I, shared that. She's very open about her story. She's this, incredible. Ben can attest. She is the
better Amy.
Also Amy. The better Amy by far.
How's best Amy doing?
She is out doing a plant swap for our garden with her pals at a park. That's what the best Amy's doing right now. But she, has overcome all these amazing things, but it's really great for me as an educator to have this other perspective, to be oh my God, I didn't even think about that. And to be able to share that with some of my colleagues who are frustrated or view it as this kid doesn't care about my class. And it's no, they probably do. They probably also care about watching their 9 siblings while their parents try to keep the lights on. There's just not always the same reality.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have hated it. My entire house was painted pink when I was a kid, so the interior is all pink. You think I want my friends knowing that? As a 9-year-old boy, it's just because every single person here besides me is a woman. That's why it's pink. Leave me alone.
Very calming. Very calming environment.
Yeah. And it was a very faint pink. It was barely beyond eggshell white. That's just if you look at the trim, very pink. But yeah, it's just there's kids already being bullied and teased. You don't need to bring in how they live as a way to do that. But it's been incredible to see people adapt to it. And I have a bunch of teacher friends that are making house calls, making sure these kids have what they need to make it through the week, knowing that, their parents may be essential employees that are out and not able to help, or, hey, there's only one device in the entire house and there's 4 kids, So, yeah.
I've had a lot of kids who just want to hang out, kids who have been can we just connect on Zoom for a little bit of time? And it's so heartwarming, and it's cool. It's strengthened some of my connections with those students because they just, they want to talk and just connect and see my face and my dogs and, whatever. And it's been really heartwarming to see that, because middle schoolers are not always the most outwardly loving or appreciative. And then to see them be no, I actually miss you and want to connect with you has been good, because I miss them terribly. It's so weird.
And just know, when school's back, I will pretend I don't know who you are, and I hate you. I'll just say that when friends are around, that's what's going to happen. But
yeah, but now when it's just us, we can hang on a Zoom call and I'll tell you what's going on in my life. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I also think it's really cool for kids to see you in your own home, in your own comfort zone, your own environment, because they only know who we are at school. And especially for middle school kids to be oh, she has a dog. She has a bookshelf behind her in her little office at home. So it helps them to get to know us better too.
Yeah.
Which they'll never admit, but they think is really cool.
That's been the number one request, is please bring the dogs onto Zoom. So
well, they have a calming presence, That's,
they do.
Yeah.
Do you allow your students to bring their pets, or is it no, you're studying, you can't be having no pets in this video?
I am pretty strict about no phones in class until a kid tells me I got a puppy. Do you want to see pictures? And then I'm get it out, turn on, let me see it immediately, because I want to see, that's I definitely want to see all pets, all new siblings, whatever else they want to show me. I'm kind of a sucker for it.
Has that made show and tell different since we were all kids? Oh, I brought this thing from home. No, I have this thing on my phone. This is my brand new puppy. This is my show and tell.
I have kids who've done memes. Can I please show you this? Whatever. And they're just trying to make a human connection, which is welcome.
I just remembered a couple weeks ago, I finally wrote a letter to my high school Spanish teacher that I'd been meaning to write for 17 years. And I was yeah, these people all make a difference in your life. And I knew her kids. One was like a grade above me and one was a grade below me. So like I knew her kids, and like they, were kids of a teacher. So they got picked on a lot, but it was just like, I was a very quiet, shy, terrified kid all the time as a kid. And then I was like, oh, we're all in the same playing field. None of us know Spanish. So we're all learning how to communicate. And I like got to be like this gregarious person. And one day she was complaining about me in the teacher's lounge. Cause she's like, I can't get this kid to shut up in my class. And it was like,
the rest of your teachers were like, Ben, right?
Like, are we? Is there another one? Because this is a pretty small school. It's like 300 people for 6 grades. Like, Ben, right? We can't get him to talk. We can't get him to say a word.
Well, I give you a lot of credit for writing that letter, even though you think it took you a really long time, because I think we find that there are a lot of times where you have no idea if you're doing something right or if you're making a difference, and the few and far between pieces of gratitude that you do get from students or parents really mean a lot. So that was really awesome that you were able to do that even at this point.
Yeah. I also had to tell her that like she actually sat me down. I was a salutatorian of my class, because one guy just kept taking shop classes to pad his GPA. Also, we had a very ruthless grading scale. A was 94 to 100. B was 88 to 93. So it was a really ruthless, like, getting a 4.0 was real tough. Anyway, so I didn't get it. So I was like pretty smart, and my Spanish teacher sat me down and she's like, hey, I know you're doing really well here, but you're probably going to fail in life if you keep up what you're doing because you're lazy and you have no goals and aspirations and you give up real easy. So if you don't stop that, you're never going to become anything and you'll have wasted all your potential. I was like, oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah, that's some honesty right there.
Yeah. She's like, I don't want to see that. I was like, oh, okay. Oh, shit. Okay. So I was like, yeah, just so you know, this is what I've done since I left. I mean, I didn't graduate college because I really hated it, but, but I did pretty cool stuff. So anyway, I felt really excited to like finally reach out to her and be like, hey, that advice really helped. So.
Those are the things that like keep you going, though. A class of kids that I obviously had in 8th grade, they're graduating from high school this year, and because they don't get a graduation, there's like a Facebook group set up to adopt them and like send them cards and celebrate them a little bit. And it's been like I've been in tears like 9 times this week, and of happy tears, like hearing from parents or like seeing students that I really loved and were super important to me going off to college and seeing what they're accomplishing and getting to connect with them. That's like, that's the best. That's the drinking the beer made from your own hops.
Yes, that is exactly right.
There it is. Just
you got it.
Bringing it all back.
This is why she writes.
That English teacher, we're going to resolve that story if it kills me.
So I love your parallels earlier. I'm thinking about yes kids. We cut them down to the ground once a year. we approach them at least once a year with fire and just burn the crap out of them. Yeah. I mean, it makes you feel good. We're gonna.
We water them. We give them feed, fertilizer.
Yeah. Yes. And it's years to see what that thing you did 4 years ago.
That is so true.
It's paying off. And then 17 years later, you get a letter, and you're like, I've already retired, and I gave up on kids 10 years ago. That's probably not
Ben,
true.
I'm going to have to
That's reasonable.
roll. I've got some chores to finish up, and it's going to get dark here. So
perfect. Same here. No. Thematically.
So thank you so much for including me. It was lovely to chat with all of you. Feel free to continue this conversation without me.
Before you go, where can people find out more about you if they want to?
Sure. I have a Facebook page and an Instagram. They are both just Wosoba Farms Hops. I try to post updates about what's going on in the hop yard throughout the year, plus a few fun, unrelated things like pictures of baby calves and things like that.
Perfect. Yeah. You got to get them hooked. Give them that outside content, a little peek in. All right, Carla, go. Yes. You've got things to do.
All right. Cheers,
thank you so
everyone.
much. Cheers.
Cheers. See ya.
Bye.
All right, so I was actually about to do the wrap-up stuff anyway. Unless you guys had anything else you guys want to get all excited about. I was going to... Wait, hold on. I think I had one more. Oh, yeah. Well, that's probably gone now. Do you feel like... Oh, I'll ask it anyway. Do you feel that your backgrounds in education have helped you with your secondary pursuits, like things that you've taken from your educational training and experiences that have helped you kind of find your footing more easily in your secondary fields?
Yes.
Yeah. You go first, Clinton. Sorry.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is such kind of a new thing. We talked about kind of being on that ground level type approach. Everybody has questions, people. We started just putting up telephone poles in a field last November, like the day after Thanksgiving. And it's like, oh, he's building a pole barn. That's going to be nice. And he's like, there's like 60 poles out there and some of them are leaning weird. And I don't know what this guy's doing. So yeah, it's been nice just to, just be able to approach people or, just field those questions and help, kind of educate and inform people what's out there. It's great just talking to brewers. Brewers know a whole lot about beer. A lot of them know a ton about hops. Some of them are just like, this is the flavor I want. What do I need to do to get there? So it's nice to kind of bridge that as well, to kind of be that expert in the content for that. So yeah, absolutely, for sure.
I think that teaching prepares you for comedy in a lot of ways, just in terms of being able to stand up and talk to people and communicate something.
It's good material. Good material.
Yeah, it works. You do get material. I talk a lot about teaching, but I think that ability to communicate with the crowd, and also this sounds like a humble brag, and I promise it's not a brag at all, but when I first started, and when people typically first start, they're nervous on stage, or they don't know what to do in front of a crowd. And I felt like I had I'd already jumped over that hurdle, because all I do is talk to people.
Large groups of people are like, I don't care what you have to say right now. Make me care.
It set me up for every bar show I've ever done, because no one gives one half of a shit about what I have to say. And at least they're drunk. So that works out better. But really, it does help. And then I teach English and I'm a writer. So yeah, I make my students write every day, and I get to sneak in bits of my own writing with them. And kids are really creative and interesting. So it's fun to talk to them. I taught drama the past 2 years, and I'm done with that cycle. I am not cut out to be a drama teacher. That is not my gift in this world. But even that was helpful. It's just helpful to stage experience is good either way, I would say.
Yeah, I don't think most drama teachers are cut out to be drama teachers, in my experience.
The woman who had my job before me, she retired. She was a born drama teacher. She was a former actor. She'd worked at Disneyland. She loved building sets. She got very into it, and God bless her, because I was I don't know, just memorize the lines. I don't know what to tell you. Just do it. I don't know. So I'm very glad that journey is coming to an end for me. For next year, I'll be teaching other things. So
yeah.
But it's, kids are great.
Did you have any high school drama experience, Clinton, or did you skip that wonderful part?
Yeah, I kind of did a lot of the musical stuff and musicals, and then band and choir too. So and I came in late, but I did end up being the valedictorian. So it was right at the end. Guy. But that's neither here nor there. So not really germane, but you asked. Very dramatic.
Yeah.
My class had 17 kids who qualified to be valedictorian. I was in a class of beasts. They're all doctors and lawyers. I'm deeply embarrassed and unsuccessful comparatively. They were all just killers. I had a 3.9 and was in the lower part of my class in terms of GPA. Insane.
Oh God, that's intense. Yeah, I just because I get to brag here. My first time going out for a drama role, I was the second male lead. So pretty impressive.
I did not do drama in high school. I did choir. That was my big.
Oh, crushed choir, all state choir, no big deal. Can't sing, can't maintain a note at all anymore. But what was I going to say? I got into my drama class by doing do you do this in your English classes? Satire writing. Do you guys ever? We had to do a senior satire, and it was a.
I am dying to do satire, because that's that's my main writing thing. I just finished like the Second City Theater like satire writing track. Like I'm done and have been working on it. And I tried to explain it to some students. I think middle school is a little young. I think in high school they're a little bit more whatever, like ready. They are thinking that way. Middle school, some of them still aren't sarcastic enough or able to like heighten a piece well.
Oh yeah, I loved sarcasm my entire life. It's the only way I knew how to communicate before ninth grade. But so I seen your satire I worked on with my friend Brady Bell IV, who also did the theme music for this podcast. So, you know, even though we went to college together for a year, and then I moved half a country away. But I was like, hey, I'm doing this podcast, you're doing music, do you want to like throw in a theme song? But we did a satire together. It was everybody's supposed to read theirs in front of the class, and we had 26 students in the class, and so they were all paired up, you know, so it's only like 13 readings. The first 12 were in one day, and then me and his was the next day, because ours was like 22 pages long, and we had like characters, they all had voices, like we drew up a map to explain the world we'd built. And they're like, have you guys thought about trying out for any of these plays? We're like, no. She's like, well, the tryouts are tomorrow. And I was like, I'll go try out for a play. Whatever. I got nothing else going on. I got cut from the basketball team, so, you know, I got nothing else. It was an awful play, and I should never have been given the role, but I did get it.
I mean, I love that you just fell into this acting career. That's
pretty
impressive.
Then I got another role in another play, but I don't remember. I don't think it was as big. I think, like, you know what, he doesn't really have the chops. Maybe we give him a more backup role in an even worse play. But I don't know why I'm going down this rabbit hole. High school was great, is what I was saying the whole time. And it's
Let's
great.
talk about our other high school failures.
Ooh, so many of them. Oh, people hated me.
Oh my God. How much time do you have?
I was popular in one way. I was class president all 4 years.
Dang.
And secretary and treasurer and anything besides vice president, because nobody was I didn't even run. They're just like, Ben's going to do that. Nobody's running. It's just Ben ran one time for president, lost, and then the person's like, I don't actually want to be class president, so they made me that, and then I just kept it because no one in my class cared anything about our school.
Man.
Killing it.
Dang, you were like a big man on campus.
No, everyone hated me. It was wonderful. It's a wonderful time in my life. Never go back.
I don't want to brag too hard, but I was Christian club president, so don't be too jealous. Yeah. I used to love to tell people they were going to go to hell if they didn't accept Jesus. So it didn't. I wouldn't say it did much for my popularity.
It probably did a little bit, just not the most positive response to it. Anyway, this is why high school doesn't matter, and so any underage drinkers listening at home, it can get better, is what I meant the whole time. And for adults also, as Amy and I will show, you can actually all of us, we all got into secondary careers pretty late. Just because you're not doing great at 25 doesn't mean you won't be doing great at 35, right?
That's correct.
You got it.
Perfect. Look, I was like, this is all a really weird turn that I'll probably pretend we never had. Got it. And yes, but anyway, I think what we wanted to get into was, of course, that education leads to wonderful things, even if you don't see it in the moment.
That's correct.
Yeah, and teachers are great, even the bad ones, because you learn something from all of them.
When I was a principal, I said, every child brings joy to my life. Some children bring joy when they walk into the office. Some of them bring joy when they walk out. So
it's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
That's right.
Blessings manifest in many different ways.
That's perfect.
I think that's anything you guys want to talk about before we go?
No, this has been super fun.
It's been great. Yeah, appreciate you having me on.
All right, Clinton, where can people find out more about Herschfeld Hops?
Yeah, check us out. We are on Facebook at Herschfeld Hops. Just search us up. Find a way to get involved with your local craft beer scene and Ohio hops. The Ohio Hop Growers Guild also has a public Facebook page that you can check in on for different updates from different growers around the state of Ohio. So, drink beer made here. Cheers.
Boom. Amy Estes, what about you? What do you got? How can people? Yep.
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Amy's Got Jokes, and my website is amy'sgotjokes.com.
Oh, consistency.
I nailed that branding, yeah.
Yeah, I did not. You can find out more about Barley Me across social media at BarleyMePod. Email questions, comments, concerns to barleymepodcast@gmail.com. Damn it. I do now have barleymepod@gmail.com too. But also, during this terrible hellscape that is our world, just so you know, I am pushing that Instagram TV, doing chugs for charity, #chugs for charity. If you enjoy those things, go ahead and hit me up on Venmo at Comedian Ben Rice, because consistency is key. Why would I not just make a Barley and Me Venmo? Because I've already got one for comedy. God damn it. Anyway, if you give me money, I take none of it. I take it all, and I dump it in to support service industry workers, teachers, students, and performing arts theaters affected by this shutdown. Now, if you don't want to give to me, which is completely reasonable, you don't know me from Adam, and also maybe most of my listeners are older, you don't have a Venmo. You can message me and find out a way to pay me directly, and I'll still give all that money away. Or you can just use, for me, I like to use donorschoose.org for teachers, obviously, and students. You can find your local school district, or a random one, or just a nationalized one, right? And then, let's see here. For service industry workers, you can use Another Round, Another Rally. By the way, anotherroundanotherrally.com. By the way, if you buy a Barley and Me t-shirt at Zen Threads, that's zen-threads.com, every penny of profit also goes to Another Round, Another Rally, because I don't care about money from this podcast. But if you want to give money to service workers, you can use that also, or you can find a local charity for that. And then for performing arts theaters, if you don't want to give me the money to give to them, just go to their website. They all have a donate page right now. Please help support people that can't do it if you are financially able to do so. This has been wonderful. Thank you guys so much. This has been episode 127 of Barley and Me with Amy Estes.
Thank you.
Carla Wosoba of Wosoba Farms Hops in Iowa, and Clinton Herschfeld from Herschfeld Hops in Ohio.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Oh, thank you guys so much for doing this. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day on a Saturday to talk about whatever the hell I'm babbling about. And to my listeners, thank you so much for listening. Stay home safe.